Hello and welcome back to another quilting video. I'm Olivia and today I'm sharing this camping quilt and how I toned down the really in-your-face themey fabrics I started with. Really quick 5-second background on why I made this quilt. I wanted a dedicated quilt I could take camping. I wanted to not have to worry about getting it dirty or being on the ground, and I wanted it to be just slightly girly. That said, I didn't want it to be over the top with the theme despite these starting fabrics. So to do this, I'm going to stick to a color palette. I'm going to add a lot of subtler fabrics. I'm going to repeat a lot of the motifs and patterns throughout. I'm going to add some contrast, and I'm going to give those starting fabrics space to breathe within the quilt. So I'll explain these a bit more as we go. These are my starting fabrics, and you can already see it's themey, it's bright, it's pink, and I love it. The first one I decided on was this pink background with the bears and the trees and the yellow suns, and then there's this white background with the little tents and the green trees. I'm going to fussy cut this fabric, and I'm not going to use the blue and grey tents. I'm just going to use the pink and the brown ones. The next two are a bit more subtle than the first, and they're both dark and patterned, so they'll hopefully hide the dirt well. And the greys match up with this one over here, which is something I look for. Now to bring in more of the pink and yellow over here, I brought in the feathers, again with a similar grey tone, and it also introduced this deep purple colour. The pink and the yellow are not identical to over here, but that's actually preferable to me. They're similar and they mix well, but being slightly different introduces a little more complexity and depth than if I just repeated the exact same shades over and over again. From the dark eggplanty purple, I brought in this lighter purple floral print. Again, it's a different shade, but within the same colour family. The yellow ties it into these other fabrics, and the peachy pink is new. So this is my starting point. The campy, natural, outside motifs are repeated, and you know exactly what this quilt's about, but I don't want the actual quilt to be too themey. I want it to be a little more subtle. So although all of these are very themey and loud, I hope you can see how I picked each of them intentionally and with the plan to create a grouping that plays well together and is not too in your face. If instead I'd just gone to a shop and bought every single camping or outdoorsy fabric I could find, or if I ignored the colour palette I found while I was picking these out, then creating a cohesive quilt top would have been pretty difficult. So toning down these themed fabrics really started when I was choosing the themed fabrics, if that makes sense. It also gives me a pretty clear direction to go in from here. I'm going to continue with the colour palette I've got, but I'm going to expand it just a little, bring in variations and colours that are just a little bit adjacent to what I've already got here. I'm starting with some solids. I've got a pretty standard khaki and this brown, green, not really sure what you'd call that one. And then to stop it getting too dark and drab and dreary, I'm adding this bright dark yellow to play with the yellow suns here. These are just included to give your eye a little bit of breathing room when you're looking at the quilt, but I don't want too many solids because that's boring and it would create a kind of two-dimensional dichotomy of big in-your-face patterns and then plain no patterns. So I want some small scale patterns to give a bit more movement to these quieter fabrics. This dark brown tiny floral pattern is very dark, but it has so much white that it's kind of light as well. Then this lighter almost pinky brown is a bit more muted and introduces a more geometric pattern to balance out all the natural patterns I've got going on here. And the same thing again with this green print and with this purple one. Now we clearly need some lighter fabrics. I began with darks as I thought they would be best for a quilt I plan on taking outside a lot, but this is just way too much dark and not enough light. We need some contrast. So this golden brown floral brings in both a lighter shade and another natural pattern. I like that it's not as small scale as those last few, and it's got a white background to it, just like all the other fabrics so far. I'm being mindful of not introducing any cream with the lighter fabrics I'm bringing in, because all of those big original patterns are white based. Then two more greens, which are just a little lighter than these two thanks to the pattern print, so they read much lighter than the actual green that's in there, if that makes sense. This pale baby pink print again lightens everything up, and the little tree pattern reinforces the theme, but the small level of contrast between the pink and the white keeps it pretty subdued. I matched that pink to this teeny tiny scale, very pale pink checkerboard print, just because the tree print did introduce a new shade of pink and I wanted to repeat that so it didn't look out of place. And I finished everything off with this pale tan brown print and a white based dark grey floral. This one almost inverts those dark grey prints from the beginning. It's dark on light and it's small not big, but it rounds out the group nicely. So that's my fabric pool for this camping quilt. I think it's a good mix of deep dark fabrics and lighter brighter fabrics. They play off each other with similar shades and patterns, and the smaller prints and solids tone down the initial themed fabrics by giving them space, you know? They're going to be incorporated into a whole and be supported by these smaller prints rather than smack you in the face. So I'm going to get this quilt made and we'll see if that worked. Hang tight. Okay, thanks to the magic of video making, here's the finished quilt top. I ended up hating the dark yellow solid, hating it. I included it because it's similar to the yellow suns and it's just way more intense than every other fabric. I took out the plain rows I cut of it pretty early, but that left this triangle row. I really didn't want to redo that, but having just a single instance of that yellow fabric didn't look good either, so I sucked it up and replaced that yellow and completely removed it from the quilt. Other than that, all the fabrics you've seen are in this quilt. You can see how those initial starting fabrics are dispersed across the quilt top. They're not concentrated together, and there's always those quieter fabrics separated decorating them. This gives those big feature fabrics room to breathe, and that's just one more trick to toning down the theme. Now it's a much calmer quilt top, and I'm really happy with it. It's still obviously outdoorsy, but it's softer. I took it away for a long weekend a while back, and it looks good outside here. The theme comes across, but it's not too in your face to a crazy degree. I think it's just enough. So there you have it, a themey camping quilt that I calmed down with the other fabrics added and the way they're laid out in the quilt. If you like this video, please give it a like down below and consider subscribing to my channel. In the comments, let me know if there's any other tricks you've got to make themey quilts like this a little more subtle. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.